In this week's The News, Judith will still vote for disenfranchisement laws that she opposes as unconstitutional and wrong. Violent road cone attacks up 300% according to someone wanting to distract you from real issues. Sight seekers disappointed that tsunamis don't look like they do in the movies when they're about to destroy New York. And the FBI comes to town. The X-Files Aotearoa will be next. All that and more in this week's The News. Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's The News. I'm Paul, and I want to believe the Attorney General Judith Collins, KC, seen here setting her attack eyebrows to stun, put out a report on Monday which the government tried to stall, criticising the government plans to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters, calling it unconstitutional, particularly because it would disproportionately impact Māori, Pacifica and disabled communities. In response, Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith, seen here in 1987 living the way he assumes Green MPs live today, said, "Look, we know the Electoral Commission met every deadline they said they would at the last election, even though they were severely under-resourced, and it was only the coalition who are unhappy with the length of time because we had to wait and see if we bent the knee to Winston or David, or both, and then spent over a month begging for an agreement. But it's important that we find an excuse to stop so many people from voting." 40,000 nurses have been striking all over the Mutu this week in response to a pay offer which they say doesn't reflect the level of work they actually undertake in a health system where hiring freezes and budget cuts are impacting every level of the sector. In response, Health Minister Simeon Brown, seen here trying to act totally normal by hiding in the corner of a dark empty room, tried to claim the highest pay rate for the most qualified nurse is somehow the average nurse's salary, so they should just shut up and be happy with what's on offer, in a move that experts are calling just straight up bullshitting to vilify nurses. Who the fuck does that, man? Minister of Transport Chris Bishop, seen here pointing at who he really blames for the government's low popularity ratings, has announced funding cuts for councils that use too many road cones, in a move being called a really stupid way to deal with the cost of living crisis that we were told the government was going to be laser focused on by the public. In response, the Ministry of Transport has said, well, if we kill more people with unsafe practices, that thins out potential markets, which drives down costs. It's a win-win for everyone. Well, except those who are dead. But, they're dead, so they can't complain. The country braced itself for tsunami activity this week after a massive 8.8 scale earthquake hit Russia. Being so far from the epicenter of the quake, the impacts felt here included increased swells, unseen and unexpected current changes, and everyone cursing at the same time as a 6:30 a.m. emergency alert was sent to confirm the tsunami was still happening in case anyone had fallen asleep forgetting about it. The government has this week repealed the ban on oil and gas exploration after a last-minute change which handed discretionary powers to two ministers, leaving opposition MPs just 23 hours to prepare for debate. The change mostly focuses on decommissioning oil fields and who gets landed with the bill to do so after what Mining Minister Shane Jones, seen here after his latest free dinner from a lobbyist for an industry that has weirdly had pro-them laws recently passed, said was, quote, consultation in Māori ways. I interviewed myself. While exploration companies have said they're concerned about returning to the country because they consider a supportive one-term government a real issue, there's been no new oil or gas discoveries in 2 decades. The results of any new find wouldn't be evident for at least a decade from now, so in no way fix the current energy issues. Labour's Energy Minister Megan Woods has said those are all serious concerns and obvious issues, but we really need to be worried about the minister interviewing himself. I mean, we all remember the last time he did that and the charges on his credit card that happened with it. The coalition is making child labour great again with a new review process into the jobs that kids can do on farms, and what Labour is describing as a solution looking for a problem. Children on farms are often brought up undertaking light chores like collecting eggs or watering gardens, and Brooke Van Velden, seen here hearing that injury rates are climbing in the workplace, and an Auckland MP from a wealthy suburb nowhere near a farm, has decided that this needs to be formalised in a way that she's calling totally not a nanny state overreaching and telling parents how to parent issue. Federated Farmers has, however, welcomed the move, saying we don't want kids operating heavy machinery for the obvious risks that would pose. And Groundswell has said, we want kids working on farms all the time. So much so that they never go to school because that's when they get indoctrinated about the woke extreme left and learning things like how vaccines work and that climate change is real. Retailers are saying some will be facing bills of up to 80 grand a year in contactless payment fees under the proposed changes from the government that would outlaw the fees at point of sale but not stop banks from charging them. The Retail Association says this will require costs to be passed on to consumers with general price increases. which will impact everyone paying with cash, contact cards, or contactless options, said Finance Minister Nicola Willis, seen here knowing she can afford a block of butter while you can't. We're clearly focused on that cost of living crisis, and these fees are annoying, but the best way to fix this is to make it everyone's problem, not just a select few people's problem. Head of the FBI, Kesh Patel, seen here screwing up the salute his boss prefers, has opened an official attaché office in Wellington this week to ensure they have the ability to keep spying on our largest trading partner, tracking whatever it is that makes Don Jr.'s eyes glaze over the way they do, and know which online tools are being developed to help them and their allies stay in power through social media algorithm training. Said Patel, "It's not true we set up this because President Trump has only seen the first Lord of the Rings film and he wants the ring and is concerned about the threat of Sauron. We have some legitimate concerns as well. Frankly, though, I'm glad to be in a country where people in charge have no links to dodgy behaviour with minors. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to meet your Deputy Prime Minister." New numbers released this week that, under a controversial police directive from earlier in the year, reveal that over 5,000 shoplifting complaints have gone unanswered by police. Said Police Minister Mark Mitchell, seen here moments before his security contractor training kicked in and he realised being on a TVNZ interview with Jack Tane was a trap he'd just set off. "Don't worry, citizens arrest laws will fix it, and we know concerned New Zealanders will be jumping at the chance to tackle crime directly and put themselves in potential harm's way." Documents released on Thursday about the way pay equity changes were made by the coalition, which saw tens of thousands of mostly women stripped of any chance of fighting for fairer pay within their industries, show Workplace Relations Minister Brooke Van Velden, seen here daydreaming about Victorian child mines, pitched the idea as a way to ensure employers' rights to underpay were protected. Van Velden, quoted in the document, said, "Any limits on workers' human rights are justified to reduce risks to employers," before the process was rushed through. Working with Finance Minister Nicola Willis to ensure the retroactive dismissal of claims in progress at the time, Cabinet signed off on the measure in March with no formal regulatory review. Said Van Velden of the rush changes, "We accepted the risks of these changes in a pursuit of a broader policy goal, like pulling up the ladder behind us and making sure the poor and working class know where they stand with us." Pseudo-law enthusiast Richard Savelle, seen here trying to bring back 90s boy band chic, was this week sentenced for repeated and violent online threats he made against former Prime Minister Dame Jacinda Ardern and charges of obstructing justice after absconding on bail and going on the run for 20 months. Savelle was sentenced to 11 months in prison with no special release conditions because the judge felt that Savelle would never meet them because he doesn't consider himself guilty of a crime. Said pseudo-law experts, "It's fascinating how someone like this views the world. If he hadn't made the threats, chances are he'd be running for council this year, probably in Hamilton or Central Otago." And finally, nominations have now closed for this year's local body elections, and while the last of nominations are still being finalised and will be released next week, we already know there are a few notable names. Former National Party MP and trendsetter in the world of creating political parties for fringe conspiracy believers, Jamie Lee Ross, is seeking a position on the Howick Local Board. Performer Suzanne Prentice is running for the Invercargill Licensing Trust, and comedian and actor Oscar Kitely is seeking re-election on the Henderson Massey Local Board. It should also be noted that Bernard Hickey in Hastings is not this guy. Bob Watson in Marlborough isn't the late Major League Baseball player. Chris Hadfield in Wanaka is not a former astronaut. Kevin Smith in Buller is not this filmmaker. Mark Watson in Tararua is not this British comedian. Bruce McLaren in Rangiora is not the legendary and long-dead race car driver. Mike King in Ahuriri is not the comedian and mental health advocate. Murray Wilson in National Park is not the father of the Beach Boys. Mark Patterson in Sefton is not the New Zealand First MP. That the only OJ running in Timaru is doing for the election and doesn't involve a white Ford Bronco. That Paul Williams in Rangiora is not a Grammy winner, although he may be a great singer. I honestly don't know. That Richard Wilson in Ashburton is not the late One Foot in the Grave actor known for playing Victor Meldrew. That Scott Adams in Marlborough is not the creator of Dilbert. That Simon O'Neill in National Park is not the controversial tenor who once claimed that Māori were barely post-Stone Age people. Tony Todd in Ashburton will not appear in your mirror if you say his name 3 times. And that Dunedin's Tony Bennett is not a legendary lounge singer and music writer. And that is this week's The News. Thanks again for watching and supporting. Live long, prosper, be one with the Force, and we'll catch you all next week. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along and deal with these guys for the rest of the year.